It's hard to overstate the importance of a news event today that seemingly came out of nowhere, despite the fact that it is receiving very little attention or coverage from most mainstream media outlets and foreign policy pundits. And in fairness to them, it is seemingly difficult to analyze in great depth, given how surprising it seems, given how, as I said, out of nowhere, it seems to have appeared. The Middle East has basically been driven over the last at least 6 years or 7 years by a seething animus between two major countries in the region, Iran and Saudi Arabia. The tensions obviously have religious overtones in that one is a Shia country, one is a Sunni country. But there's also a lot of geostrategic considerations, especially given the fact that the United States has sided so heavily with Saudi Arabia, one of the U.S.'s longtime partners. It is what has driven, among other things, the war in Yemen, as the Iranians fund and arm the Houthis in Yemen, against whom the Saudis have been waging a very vicious war for a number of years, beginning under the Obama administration, a war supported by both the United States all the way back to Obama, as well as Great Britain. So the potential for these two countries to be brought together and to have a cooling of tensions and to even reestablish diplomatic relations, which appears to be what happened, is of immense consequence for that region, but also for the United States and for China, given the fact that it was China that engineered this agreement. So let's begin first with the Wall Street Journal account of what took place. There you see it on the screen. The headline: Saudi Arabia and Iran restore relations in a deal brokered by China. Quote, Iran and Saudi Arabia agreed to reestablish diplomatic relations Friday in a deal mediated by China, ending 7 years of estrangement and jolting the geopolitics of the Middle East. The deal signals a sharp increase in Beijing's influence in a region where the U.S. has long been the dominant power broker, and could complicate efforts by the U.S. and Israel to strengthen a regional alliance to confront Tehran as it expands its nuclear program. It comes as the U.S. has been trying to broker a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, an effort now clouded with uncertainty. China in recent years has built closer economic ties with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, both of which are important suppliers of oil to the world's second largest economy. But this bridge-building effort is the first time that Beijing has intervened so directly in the Mideast political rivalries. It comes at a time when relations between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, long allied with Washington, have grown strained over America's diminishing security guarantees and Riyadh's decision to cut oil production to keep crude prices high during Russia's war in Ukraine. Quote, for Iran, it's about escaping diplomatic isolation. For China, it's about deepening their engagement in the region and showing it's not just an energy consumer. And for the Saudis, it's about the Americans, said Roy Tayak, an Iran expert at the Council of Foreign Relations and former State Department official and former U.S. diplomat. The article goes on, quote, China's role in the talks marks a watershed moment for Beijing's ambitions in the region, a part of the world where the U.S. has waged war and spent hundreds of billions of dollars in providing security for allies. Along with Russia's intervention in the Syrian civil war, China's diplomacy is another sign of the U.S.'s waning influence. China has stepped up its relations with Saudi Arabia and Iran in recent years as it became a major buyer of Middle Eastern oil, but its ambitions had long appeared commercial, with little interest in involving itself in the region's messy disputes. Beijing has provided a lifeline to sanctions-hit Iran, becoming its main remaining crude buyer since the U.S. pulled out of a nuclear deal in 2018. But it has also sought closer ties with Saudi Arabia, Iran's regional rival, for which it is the biggest trade partner and a top oil buyer. Riyadh has also started importing sensitive missiles technology from the Chinese military. Just a little more important detail on this we'll get to in just a second from CNN. I do just want to note quickly, however, that when it comes to major news events like this, I do think of all the largest news outlets, the Wall Street Journal tends to be the most reliable. It's the one to which I turn first. It's far from perfect, but it does seem to be less driven by and shaped by overt partisan objectives the way, say, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and certainly CNN is. We're nonetheless about to show you an article from CNN because it contains an interesting tidbit that I wanted to include. There you see it on the screen. The headline is our arch rivals Iran and Syria agree to end years of hostilities in deal mediated by China. The CNN article states, quote, Friday's announcement is also a diplomatic victory for China in a Gulf region that has long been considered part of the U.S.'s domain of influence. Talks had been ongoing since March 6 in Beijing between Iranian National Security Chief Ali Shakhamaki, Saudi Regional Security Advisor Mossad bin Mohammed Al-Abin, and China's top diplomat Wang Yi, according to Iranian state media. In an apparent pushback to American influence, Wang said that, quote, the world is not limited to the Ukrainian issue, while emphasizing that the fate of the Middle East should be determined by the people of the Middle East. So there you see the Chinese perspective, or at least the Chinese public messaging, Chinese propaganda, however you want to see it. But it's a very bold and significant move by the Chinese in what, as both articles indicate, has long been the domain of the United States. Let's bring on... Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.